Hi, Dinesh.
Hey Mohammed, how are you doing today?
Hi. Nice to see you. And thanks everyone for joining. And so hopefully we will have more audience. But anyhow, everything that we have it will be recorded in Instagram and also at YouTube. That's actually when you record everything, you may get less audience because the people, they can see it anytime that they want. But
Sure.
anyhow, we are talking and we are I think we have a good stuff. Great. So today, actually, we have Professor Dinesh Manocha. Like he's doing on nice and hot topics, especially the virtual reality, metaverse. We talk about this stuff, robotics, self-driving cars, and so we will talk about all these nice topics. And we are grateful of him that he could make for today. And actually, we talked previous time, the previous week, we already started this concept of virtual reality with virtual try-on. If you remember that we discussed with Professor Ming Lin previous week, that actually was the, she's wife of Dinesh. We can talk a little bit about her side. We heard about life, and then we will hear from him as well. That's actually nice, like a couple of scientists, great scientists. Dinesh got her bachelor from IIT Delhi. Like IIT are like the best. Like there are several things in the other, like KAIST in South Korea, Sharif University in Iran, and several others that are like the top universities. He got it from IIT Delhi in 1987, and then he went to Berkeley in 1992. He got his PhD. And then after that, he went to North Carolina for several years, and recently, like 4 years ago, joined University of Maryland. And he got, lots of great awards that you can name it. I sent it already in the bio, and like Honor Young Investigator Award, Sloan, and lots of others. Uh, Great. Now we have him, so we try to use his time to make the best out of this live. And let's start with the question that we will ask all the time. So we will start actually with some questions about life, early life. Then we will go to some topics like metaverse and others. We will come back a little bit about life and we ask more research questions. So we have the combination of both. Great. So Dinesh, so I think we want to start with saying something, or I can start asking questions.
Thank you for inviting me. Hello to everybody. It's always a pleasure to talk to my colleague. Mohammed is my colleague at University of Maryland. His office right next to mine. I enjoy my conversations, and I also enjoy his work. He's one of the top theory faculty in the world. So having him as my colleague, talking to him is always fun.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I like. This is also a good experience for me because I know people much better, and this is like I enjoy actually talking that and learn a lot. Great. So I believe in like every person who is successful, like you need to see back in like the childhood. See what did he talk about at that time? What was his dreams? And a little bit talk about that. Then we will. So we will start with that one. So did you want to be a scientist when you were a child? Like, have you thought that you will become like essentially distinguished scientist in a top university when you were a child? Yeah.
So that's a great question. I grew up in India, born in 65, in 70s and 80s, and that was a very different world, right? That was a time uh, India was like an emerging economy. There were virtually no computers in 70s. There was no internet, no social media. So the information that people have today of what's happening in the world was not so prevalent. Today everybody in the world know what's going on, technology, political, or whatever climate things are happening. So, I came from a middle class family. Actually, my father was a professor at IIT Delhi. So in India, uh, university campus are confined. You have the big university building. It's not as big university like University of Maryland. It's a technology school, but there was a community where all the faculty lived in housing. So it was like a close community. So I grew up in a very educational setting, went to a good private school, and of course I liked math and science, that was the thing. And I used to math a lot, and I thought if I like math a lot, I'll pursue something which is math related. That's all I knew. And then, of course, you go to high school, you go to technology, IITs, and that one thing led to the other. And then I got exposed to computer science as an undergraduate. And then I went to grad school, and then I really got into research in my grad school at Berkeley. I did some research at IIT, but mostly in grad school. And then I said, wow, this is fun. This is cool. Let's do it. And I'm still enjoying it.
Great. I think you answered a lot of questions. I may ask some specific questions. So that's actually great. I think that's also another interesting thing that we have in this life. We have quite, diverse set of people, and diverse is not just by gender. Actually, I believe in diversity in every aspect, like the one that is actually in U.S. Constitution, like about race, color, gender, everything. So we have like the people from that they have been born at different places. That's also one other nice thing that we get some ideas about educational life through the whole world. So, and that's interesting that actually your father was a professor. That's nice to know. And that's actually, I think, that can be a great advantage. And what did he teach at IIT?
So he was a math professor, mathematics. So you can see,
Okay,
yeah. And math is the core subject, so IIT is small. So no matter what engineering you do, in IITs, your freshman and sophomore year, you take some same math classes, the first level math, calculus, or linear algebra, So yeah, and math is everybody went through mathematical training, the curriculum was mathematical. So that's why I got exposed to math through that.
Great. So yeah, that was the thing. So I think we are talking a little bit about parenting, because I'm like a professor. I want to see what's the correct way of, essentially training or teaching to my three kids. So when you were like I don't know, middle school or elementary school, did he try to teach you math?
Well, so in Indian or probably Asian culture, and I same with my kids, he would help me with my homeworks, even in math school, middle school, high school, right? Especially math problems. So,
Yeah.
and always in fact, I like to be ahead of math, so even in the class, they're doing calculus first in 11th or 12th grade, I will be doing integration. So he definitely exposed me. And also, other thing which helped was because I grew up in a very, very intellectual climate, not only my father professor, but I was living with other people. My neighbors were all professors at IIT. You imagine you're living in an academic setting. And even in fact, when he used to talk about research, so he was doing research in math, he was writing papers. So I knew about writing papers. And when he was the professor of math, he organized a big conference at IIT, So and like a lot of our family friends were people, other mathematical researchers in India. He had collaborated in the US and many sort of other places. They would visit India, they'll come to my home. So literally you can say I grew up in an atmosphere which was very academic and research oriented. I got that being in that household.
Yes, that's actually important. So I think that is very nice that you had such an environment. So now this is actually a question that I will ask a little bit more challenging. Did you, there are some other people, that's actually, even in US, I think it is the case, probably all around the world. If like my parents' both, they were teachers. They were like elementary and middle school teachers. But I think that had effect on me. Now I became a professor. So in sometimes also they were talking that like in US, they say US dreams that, okay, you can be very wealthy, much better than your parents. But I think like a very good, like I think they were talking about 80% or even some range like this, that that depends also your parents more than anything is the environment that you are essentially grew up. Now the question becomes, some other people may grow up in more business environment. People, your parents might be CEO and others. So did you think that you missed anything in life, for like you want to be essentially a businessman, or have you ever dreamed of that? Do you think you missed anything in your life, or have you ever thought about that maybe I should took another path or something like this?
Well, life is always of opportunities. In fact, here's the difference, I would say. The academic atmosphere, so the Indian universities, that is IITs, were modeled after British system. So IIT Delhi even had collaboration with UK system. Like even my father in 70s went to UK and come back, there. I would say the US academic system, as you know, is very different from the rest of the world. You know, like this, like even when my father used to visit me, he was in US, he was at NYU after that. You know, being a professor in US, actually, if you want to be a successful professor in US, it's a multidimensional job. You know, you're multiple, you're not just doing research and teaching. You got to be entrepreneurial, you got to look for opportunity, you got to look for new trends, right? So in my viewpoint is that in a way, if you look at some of the most successful professors, not only are they great researchers, but they're also a little bit like, you know, looking for opportunity. You're looking for new cool things, right? So that spirit of being new, you know, although we're not doing for profit like that. So that was clearly, you know, I was not exposed to that. In fact, I did not know that job existed. I thought professor was this noble job where you write papers and teach. That's what I saw. There was not this pressure of in US what we see where, you know, you spend a lot of time, like how big a research I can do depends on how many grants I get. So I spend a lot of my time, what I call, you know, chasing grants or building a necessary connection. So that's different. So I think, you know, I would say the job we have at least has a lot of business-like component, except it's not like for profit, but the kind of things we do, you know, building connection, new collaboration. In fact, I've done many startups in the past. I have a new startup on robotics. So I think part of my job is very business-like, except I'm not making a lot of millions of dollars, but the nature of the job is very similar.
Yeah, so actually we talk about a startup. That's one of the things that we love to know more about it. But yeah, I think I completely agree. So in some sense, I mean, when you become essentially a professor, there are a combination of lots of things. You need to have a very strong, management skill. You need to get the grants. I mean, this is like different from the industry that when you are there, like you are at Amazon, you are at Google, you just get to use the Amazon money, Google money, and you don't think about this one. Like the grant things, or even if you write the grant say at Amazon, it's like not the same way that we are doing. Like we are funding fully the student. This is one of the things that I have noticed actually, even in US. Unfortunately, when you go to talk to industry, still lots of these people. I mean, I see these managers more at Amazon, I would say, than others. That they don't know that much idea. They are like, okay, have you done any management or something like this? I mean, they may like interview you in some of these things. I think it's interesting. The guy does not have any idea that what's going on with like being a professor. Like I think we had this discussion that each PhD student from starting to graduation is meaning essentially you have a startup that you had it, and then you have essentially sold that startup to another company. That is like that, like a successful startup. And they don't quite get this one. When you talk that, they are asking some, I don't know, you may ask some trivial, like some questions that we may answer it by heart, but sometimes they will ask some particular answer. You know, they become, the people will go nowadays and search questions and try. There are behavioral questions. There are some more other type of technical questions. The people go and prepare for that, and they expect that when they ask you about a question about management, you answer that. No, it is quite different actually. We are doing it. We are doing that one essentially in our vein in some sense. In our blood is the way that we are doing, not the way that we just answer some question. I think this is some of disconnect that I have seen between industry and academia, even in US. When you talk with these people, especially those that they don't know, when they talk about professors and say, are you teaching this? The only thing that they're having is like some teacher. That actually I don't consider, I love teaching. I really enjoy a lot. I mean, to teach such that the people learn. But I don't consider myself as a teacher. I'm doing lots of other things other than being a teacher. And that's one of the things that I think I try to also, convey that. I think hopefully this live can help. Because they don't have any idea. It's like, oh, are you going back to teach at a school? Like that seems a bit, offensive actually to me. I'm just going teaching and this guy is talking like, I don't know, personally didn't just do a bachelor in some place, maybe got some unknown place, some other, maybe master in MBA, he got it, and then he thinks that he's a manager. And that's like, especially I have seen a lot of this at Amazon, that like the people with not much high quality actually get into high positions. But anyhow, so that was some discussion that I think the life is actually very complicated when you are a professor. It's not at all. And you need to have excellent management skill, excellent scheduling skill, lots of deadlines. You need to talk lots of, good understanding about behavioral things, because you are talking with different people, and these are the people that they are not, like, for example, at some person at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they are well paid, they have a very good things. The students, they may come, they might be international students who are coming and become essentially homesick for some time, and all of them you need to handle it. They don't have any clue when you go, like the managers, they are talking about management and ask you these questions. But still, again, this is some disconnect I want to clarify here. Great. Good. So I think, and we discussed about this one, that the environment actually has some effect on that. So I will come back to ask more questions about the life, because these are important. But let's go actually do some a little bit more research in topic, then we will come back. And so let's talk about Metaverse. This is the one that Facebook actually spent quite a bit of their, like, $10 billion they spent here. The cost was that essentially their stock went half, from like 380 to like something like $186, the minimum. I think it came back a little bit now. That was, and some other issues, but that was one of the issues that also, because the investors are not sure what will happen with Metaverse. And the idea is that when you read in the article, that it may take 10 more years essentially that we know what happens with Metaverse. Okay, so let's go at, what do you think about Metaverse? What is Metaverse? That is, Guy, and what is your essentially ideas about Metaverse?
So yeah, it's a great question you ask, and this is something which, especially after Mark Zuckerberg made this speech in last October, right? He changed the name of Facebook to Meta, right?
Yes.
And so Meta was not a term he invented. He got this from, I think, a novel from, I think, Neil Stephenson, if I get the author name right, from 92. It's like one of those science fiction buzzwords, right? Before, I would not have defined Metaverse, because if you ask 100 people, you get different answers. Nobody exactly know what it means. But let me give you some history of this. So a lot of my research has been in one of the big areas of computer graphics and virtual reality. They kind of have some overlap, but they're different research communities, The person who really pioneered this area was a famous computer scientist called Ivan Sutherland in the mid-60s, okay? He was an MIT student, and then he wrote a paper. He had a very classical paper, which we always tell people, 1965. He introduced a paper called the Ultimate Display. This is 1965, when computing was infancy. There were no color displays. People just doing barely text and number crunching. He showed you can draw line, draw figures, and you can draw, you can just draw a screen. Now, today you take it for granted. You draw, you look at images. There was no such thing. He introduced paper and showed that with computer graphics, some visual display, the notion of pixels and force you can do. And then he wrote another paper in 1968 called head-mounted display. At that time, people only had like desktop displays, like your screen, but something head-mounted display, which is next to your eye. We call the term now called near-eye display today. Next to your eye, like your glasses are. Your glasses displays it like 1 inch from your eye.
So sorry, just a quick question. What was the name of that professor at MIT?
Ivan Sutherland. He's the Turing Award winner. So Ivan Sutherland.
Okay.
So he, in a way, is also known as father of computer graphics and father of virtual reality, whatever we call it. But when he introduced this concept in 1965, the classic paper he wrote, which is like earth-shattering paper, what he did, and he achieved it, he and his group. So he wrote these two papers in 60s, but he called the first paper as Ultimate Display and second paper head-mounted display, how he started the field. And the notion of that you can use this computer screen to draw something and you get immersed into it, especially if that's next to your eyes. So you're looking into that. So that was the term he used. This is what you think of a virtual world. You're next to your eyes and you're totally immersed. That's your totally immersion. So he introduced that in 65, and a lot of other people, other person that influenced me a lot, was UNC, was Fred Brooks. He's another pioneer. He did a lot of work. But if you look at the papers in that area in 60s, 70s, and 80s, they would call something like ultimate display, head-mount display, or man-machine interaction. They were just calling those terms. The term virtual reality came up in 1989 by somebody called Jaron Lanier. So if you look at the research from 65 to 80, late 80s, it was not virtual reality. It was like some ultimate display, head-mount displays. Then he introduced the term virtual reality, and 90s, when I was just starting my career at UNC, UNC was a big place. VR was a hot term. Virtual reality, virtual augmented reality, virtual world. And then academia went up and down, all these fields went up, the hype was high, then went down. And then most of the work it was still not commercial. A lot of work was done in military simulation, for training and some gaming. And then thing happened. So this is, at least since 90s, we call virtual reality. The biggest conference called IEEE Virtual Reality. The field became virtual reality. Then around 2014, the whole Oculus thing, there were these kids from Maryland. They started a company which became big. Oculus was bought by Facebook for $2 billion plus $1 billion. And then all of a sudden you saw computing industry putting serious investment, after the Oculus acquisition, Facebook, Google, Microsoft. But now I guess, so this is what I'm saying. So you look at the field, the fundamental problem is since 60s, people know it was called man-machine interaction, hand-mount display, then virtual reality. But now, right, so Mark Zuckerberg took this term from science fiction and called it metaverse. So the point I'm making is that the buzzwords come and go. It could be virtual reality, it could be augmented reality, it could be mixed reality, it could be metaverse. But if you look at the fundamental problems, right, there's still technical challenges. So when people say metaverse, especially nowadays in the media, Facebook call it metaverse, NVIDIA call it omniverse, Microsoft building their own metaverse. Will there be one metaverse, one multiple metaverse? Basically, the idea is that there'll be this huge virtual world, which will be they want to replicate the physical world, like they want like Google Home, like every part of the physical world should be at the computer model, but they want to add more stuff. Like we have one planet Earth, but there could be one of virtual. So there are different variants floating around. And the idea is that they're looking this as a convergence of three technologies. Social media right now is, Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, right? That you will totally get immersed. Right now, you used to text messages, send images, virtual avatars. That's one component. Secondly, you're totally immersed, right? Right now, we've been sitting at home for COVID. You could be just going to the street of Tehran, like you're from Iran, in metaverse, see what's happening there, just being there without physically going there. And then people are bringing the whole separate economy. There'll be cryptocurrency. People are buying houses. People are buying real estate, right? So this is suddenly we're seeing in metaverse as of today, the combination of the classical computer graphics, the classical virtual reality, the new immersive displays, the new devices, but then people are also talking about creating a parallel economy, which is still being worked out. So we are just going through this phase, with a lot of excitement, but also a lot of variance going around. So I guess the conclusion is, I cannot exactly give you a precise definition of metaverse, but I want to give you the 55-year history, how the things have evolved, and at least how things are moving in that direction. But the difference between now and before is that from 65 till 2014, most of the funding was from government, federal agency companies. But recently, especially first Facebook with Oculus and now with Metaverse announcement, as you mentioned, there was a quarterly report that Facebook is spending $10 billion a year. And I know those people, Facebook Reality Lab, they hired a lot of my students. Microsoft is putting a whole metaverse, their version of metaverse, Azure cloud computing. Google is doing their version. Apple is doing their version. So clearly the computing industry is burning lots and lots of money, and let's hope some good thing will come out of it.
Great. I think that was for the history and the current state of the art. Let me ask you one question. So in some sense, this concept of, metaverse, I think as you mentioned, these are different names, like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, metaverse. Actually, Google Glass, that was the one that was also several years ago. And that was the whole idea, I think, similar to that. And I know actually the person who was working there, he joined actually Amazon after that. I'm not so sure that was a super successful project or not, the Google Glass, because it was very hot at that time, and then it was not much talking after that. Now I think still some people are working at Google on that. So these are all these things. So that's one thing. The other thing that you mentioned about, like my understanding from the thing that you mentioned, I think correct me if wrong. So one part of virtual reality is the internet actually, because everything became online. So in some sense, then you don't go to shops. You just click and you will buy the thing. So in some sense, it is already the virtual reality that we have it, because you don't go, everything you will see it. You don't go it like in the real things, but you will see the picture of it and you decide whether you want to buy it.
Right.
That's one thing. And I think one thing that helps a lot is like kind of graphics or I think that the graphics or like this image processing and other things that will be added to the internet. So in some sense, I mean, virtual reality is that I think that's somehow like the games, everything. These are talking more about the 3D graphics or two-dimensional graphics or like and other aspect of the graphics. So graphics plays very important role, and essentially being online, like internet, that's also playing role. Like for example, even in some sense, if you consider this cryptocurrencies or NFTs, these are nothing other than some kind of. These are in some sense there is not much graphic here, but at the same time, there is nothing that you will put it in your thing, in your eye. But there is this kind of virtual concept of money, virtual concept of like art that you can sell. So in some sense, this virtual thing is partly goes to the concept of internet, and I mean the whole online thing that we are currently working on, and we get more used to like online life. Plus graphics, I mean computer vision, image processing, and this type of things that helps us more. That I think the part that like the in some sense we see something and then we buy it generally, at least lots of stuff that works more in that aspect that becomes essentially more like the real. So that's my understanding. Correct me if I wrong. I think this is my understanding about virtual world or virtual reality in some sense.
Yeah, so I think you have many things you mentioned correct. So if you think about, see, what is reality? It's a very philosophical term, right? We perceive the physical world like I'm sitting in my home, you're sitting in your home, right? I'm seeing your video, you're seeing my video, okay? Now I'm using an iPad, maybe using some computer display, iPhone, iPad, something like that. On my iPad, I can make the screen brighter or dimmer, right? We can change your face complexion. So what is reality? So even if humans, humans are multi-sensor. We got eyes, ears, haptics, feedback, smell, and touch, 5 sensing, right? Now, visual is a dominant sense. Everybody knows that for most humans. But literally, what we perceive of the world. So when I was younger, my eyes were much better. As you get older, your eyesight gets worse. So even we are perceiving the physical world through our sensing, our visual sensing. My eye retinal gets the photons. They get processed by my brain, and that's what I see reality, which can be changed. So clearly, we are living in a multi-sensitive world. What is reality? And as we get older, your hearing gets worse. You cannot hear sound. You might hear hearing aids. So we're already using same thing. So clearly, the same way, there's a real physical world, and there's our perception of it. The idea on this metaverse or virtual reality is that you're making a computer-made content, as you say. But even like you go to Amazon, you see pictures, images of content, right? There could be a physical product or not, and you're conveying the same information to your eyes through photon, through audio signals, through your ears, the same thing, right? So the term reality is actually very subjective. And what is your version of reality and what is my version of reality? Even when we go out, let's say you're driving, I might see one thing in the nature, you might see other thing in the nature. Nature is very different, every human different perception to it. So the way the world is moving, you're right. We shop on internet, we go to Amazon, or we talk to people on social media. We are already into this world. So what Metaverse is trying to do, virtual reality is trying to do, take it to the next level. Most the internet communication we have is text, emails and things, images or videos. Like if you look at internet traffic, it's actually dominated by visual data, images and video, your YouTube and your Netflix. So this all pre-recorded videos, that's what happens. What we are taking with virtual reality metaverse is take it to full 3D. So when we talk about 2D images and videos versus 3D immersion. So literally, you get a feeling of being 3D, that right now I'm seeing an image of you, video of you, but imagine I see a full avatar of you, Mohammed, and I get a full 3D perception as if so if you're next to me, we're sitting in the same room right now, I will see your 3D models, your hands, something like that. So we are trying to go from the 2D illusion to more immersive 3D illusion. So that's, in that sense, is nothing else but evolution of technology, which of course gives the challenges, how do we capture it, how do we display it, how we transmit it, because more dimensionality, more detail needs more challenging problem. That's what really VR and metaverse comes out to.
Great. So I think you corrected me in some sense. That actually when we talked with Professor Ling previous week, she mentioned, I mean, some of these virtual reality things is like about, we are talking about like vision is a dominant one, as you mentioned, and we are working a lot on that. But the hearing, that's another thing that you want to make sure that if somebody comes from back of you, you may hear some noise. How can we simulate that in the virtual reality? That's, I mean, it's like a trivial thing when you are sitting here and someone comes there. But when you try to make that one essentially into real world, I think that's a lot of ideas that you need to do it there.
Right.
That's actually is, I think it's good. So in some sense, like this kind of online life, plus not just vision, but also other senses that we have essentially hearing, like taste, like a smell, and of course vision, and that like the or like something that we will touching. These are the phases that we are working on that. So that's great. Now let me ask you some question regarding that. Did we have any progress, for example, regarding I mean taste virtual reality, or like a smell virtual reality, or I mean like I think that touching we had, I think more things. I know that's one of the things probably working because it has application in games, etc. I think that people work more on the touching sense. But yeah, did you have any progress on that? I mean, are there some startups on that? What do you think about it?
So that's a great question. So there are 5 senses. We have visual, oral, touch, smell, and taste. That's we learn in high school, middle school, right?
Yes.
So visual dominant, clearly. So at least even I've been in this field for 30 plus years. The displays that we have today, right? The iPhone resolution, the displays, like Apple announced a new Mac with 5K. The displays have come a long way, though they're not perfect. You talk about sound. I myself work in sound. In fact, my previous startup was on sound. And even if sound, in real world, see, if you look at evolution, if somebody comes behind you or sound, the spatial, sound is coming in this direction or this direction. Even in a meeting, the person to right or left. The spatial sound is very important. There's a lot of work done in that. We did a lot of work there. In fact, there's also recently happening because the biggest thing in sound that has happened last year is this devices like AirPods. Everybody has small devices. And if you look at the latest version from Apple, they're adding using machine learning capability to give you spatial sound, that you can do it. So clearly, the visual and audio have the most progress because the two are dominant sense. The touch is haptics. Haptic is like, it's an old concept because even Sutherland showed in 1965 that if you take visual and simple haptics, if you combine 2 senses, visual and touch, the human presence in experience is significantly better than 1 sense. A simple and this is a 55-year-old concept, and Sutherland did the work. Fred Brooks is pioneering work, but the haptic devices, on the other hand, are limited. There was some phantom, but human, and this is what you realize: humans are very complex being. Your skin, your touch. Like even when you think of things like you do daily tasks, you button your shirt, right? You don't see it, but you feel it. Right? If you tie your shoelace, sometimes I can talk to you and tie it because you rely totally on sense of touch. No, there is no device today that can give me the dexterity of buttoning a shirt, or even you're cutting it, like you take a chop board, cut a piece of onion or a carrot, right? We don't have that. So there's been some low, but the 2 you talked about, smell, olfactory, and taste, that I would say even more primitive. So visual, more progress, audio, touch. I've seen some, I've been to these conferences. There was some group from Japan showing some smell, but I would say smell and taste are perhaps the least studied. So this is anybody who's watching this one, young researchers, there's a lot of opportunities to great work, and I'm hoping the next generation will come and solve this problem, the haptics. We still have problem in vision, oral, but the haptics and then the touch and taste, very, very open, exciting areas for research.
Yeah, that's good actually. These are exactly the one that now I learn more, and because I had some of these ideas before. Now I will when you talk with the experts in the field, I understand actually these are very nice problems. And to me, I mentioned like I'm working generally like in theory. I like theory, but I have built system. I have probably built some website. That I have written lots of the program myself even for that. That not too many people have done it. Even the system people have done it. But so I appreciate actually both sides of theory and these practical things. Anything there is a nice idea and you can work on it, I think that sounds great to me. And I actually learn a lot. These are like all open problems that now I talk with you now. I can make sure that these are open problems. So, and one thing that you mentioned is about haptic. So, what is exactly, how do we define haptics? What are the exact senses that included in haptic?
So, haptic is sense of touch. That your
Okay, so
virtual
haptic is
object.
just touch essentially.
Yeah. So like, see, I'm sitting here, even if you clap, right? You clap,
Yes.
your two hands cup as they touch each other. Let's say you button your shirt, okay? I can look at you, but I'm just opening my t-shirt button, shirt button, right? How your fingers move. One finger feel the plastic touch, other finger feel the cloth feeling, the touch. But in this case, I'm touching real objects, right? So the application, like for example, people, for example, use these haptics for surgical training. It's a lot of technology, and you become doctors, right? They want you to do these surgeries in virtual worlds, you get very good at it because before you test on real humans, right? And for that training, see, for surgeons, the sense of touch is very important when they're doing surgery. When in laparoscopic surgery or incision, they rely on sense of touch. So they want the technology to train surgeons. There are many other applications, like, even in gaming, right? In gaming, if you buy Xbox, you buy this, like sense of touch, vibrations. You have this joy box in your hand. You're holding something, and they give you force feedback. So there are a lot of tasks in real world you rely on touch. Think of driving, right? Even if you buy a Tesla, right? Even if auto driving, Tesla tells you every 1 minute, go hold your steering tight, because they want to show it. So there's so many tasks, where we rely so much on sense of touch, our brain expects that. So how can we give you a sensation of, in a virtual world, there's no physical prototype. And imagine I'm moving my hands like this, but I feel I'm touching that button or the shoelace. Same kind of feeling from physical world. So remember, the whole idea of virtual is to give you the same kind of immersion that physical world would give you, except there's no physical object. And that's where the challenge comes up.
Great, actually. So yeah, I'm thinking actually, if we talk about mingling about the this virtual try-on that you want to go and this is the one that Amazon is working on. It I think probably one of the main companies because of it is a retail store that you can see a clothes and you want to try and see how is it going with. How does it look like for you? But I think, of course, one is the visual part that you will do that. Maybe audio, I don't know, that much probably does not have that much effect. But the other one that you mentioned, haptic actually is important because you may want to also see the touch on the different part of your body and how do you feel it? Is it is it like a feet or maybe it's too small or too large? These are some of the things that I think I feel it not by seeing a vision. These are the haptic one actually that you mentioned that you feel that, seems a bit tight to me and I need to get a bigger one. And
right.
These are actually great things. And I think we don't have any clue on that type of thing. What's the meaning of that? Like, this is that's actually a great thing that you mentioned. So I was also thinking about this, we can do some kind of research when we talk about it. Like, for example, you mentioned for taste or a smell. I think to me, if I want to think about it like more a bit fundamentally, I think the main question is that are there some kinds of substances which are like very like basic ones that you can combine? I think we want to have a very limited number of them. This kind of different, like basic taste, basic smell that I can, like these are like colors that you can combine and you get new colors. So are there such kind of basic tastes or basic smells that exist and you can combine them, such as from a few of them you can make this one? So I think if there are such a thing, possibly it would be not that hard because yes, you may buy some of these basic things, then you will connect it to the internet, and now it can produce a smell for you, it can produce taste for you, and this type of probably taste would be a bit harder than that, maybe because I think the taste also the concept of And being hungry also has some effect on that. So not just the taste is important. I'm full. I don't want to eat anything. So it maybe tastes not it. But I think the smell is something that this kind of basic materials that maybe actually goes to this kind of more other things like material science or other things. Are there such basic stuff that you can combine and you can get any smell out of it? Or are there such a thing that people have worked on those type of things?
Boy, so honestly speaking, I don't have a good answer because I've not worked on it, but my feeling is, I know what you're talking about. We call it, think of like if you take a course on linear algebra, we talk about vector spaces, right? You define the kernel and everything is a linear combination. Now, in graphics field, when we teach an undergraduate graphics class, we talk about, color space. So there's something called, like the three basic color, red, green, and RGB space, right? And you can achieve a lot of colors you see in real world by taking some combination of red, green, and blue, right? If it's fully one, white, and black. So the color space, we also HSVY. So in the case of colors, there's some notion like what you're talking about. And even in sound, they're like high frequency, low frequency sound. So I'm familiar with that. So my knowledge about taste and smell is very limited, but also I've not seen anything like, so I don't really have a precise answer. But the way I look at, on the other hand, my experiences, like if you look at the cultures, like food, right? Taste. So one of the amazing things is, different part of the human have different civil. I'm from India. India has food, North Indian food, South Indian food. I love Persian food, Mediterranean food, right? People go to Chinese food, Thai food. So if you look at all this taste and food, if you look at the history over the last thousands of years, right? Different civilization in different part of the world develop different kind of cuisines, right? It's kind of history to see if it, Is there a way to unify them? Boy, I don't know much about it, but that'll be interesting. But I don't think, at least I'm sure there are people to study food science. You can ask a question from them, but at least from our field, I've not seen many research work in this area. It'll be very interesting to try. But smell is there and other things are there. So, but I think at least most of the work in the what we call virtual reality or graphic has been on visual number one, audio number two, and touch number three. We're trying to get those senses right.
Good. Yeah, I think because these are nice. I mean, I was I think there was some people, I think in Asia, that they will build some kinds of artificial meat and try to make the taste actually the same as this one. And still, I mean, they are working on it. It's like a very basic problem. That actually seems quite interesting to me. The people are working a lot on quantum stuff. Like discussing, but in some sense, actually, smell or this type of things that you will, and quantum actually involves a lot of material science as well. But in some sense, actually studying even more about the taste, about the smell, such that we can find these basic things there that we can build it. I think that would be great things. Of course, quantum is important. It has, in particular for computer science, it has this application of possibly faster computation, which is important. But at the same time, actually, this virtual reality now, I think actually it has also great effect. Why? Because I mean, for me, not all people, like what is the good thing about internet? Now everyone from all over the board, they can have, hopefully if there are not censorship and others, they can have access to internet, learn, get lots of materials, and this was impossible like even 25 years ago in lots of countries. Now they have the best internet. So if you think about this way, then of course, not all people can travel to different parts of the world and try different foods. This is currently more for celebrity or very wealthy guys. But if you can make such a thing, because this is one of the things that I will enjoy, like if I have a nice food, nice smell, I really enjoy that one. If you can make this one, it means that all, more than 8 billion people currently, or will be close to that, people in the world, they can possibly use these things. They don't need to go some other place. Of course, some people can go there, but still they can enjoy that lifestyle that maybe at some point was for just some particular people. Now you can actually smell that. Any smell you can have it, essentially. Any taste you can have it. That's actually, I think these are great, and there are lots of economic aspect on it, because if all these people can do that, surely, I mean, the company can make these things available for everyone. I think that can be like next Amazon or something, because Amazon is somehow made the same thing like about the retail available for lots of things. And the people are even far from places they can't get anything that, like I'm in DC, probably I can get lots of stuff here. But you might be in a far from place and still you can't get anything that I can get it, because
Sure.
now they will ship it for you. But these are actually great type of research. I mean, I hope that, I mean, like this, like Facebook currently is using it more as a buzzword, like Metaverse. I mean, nobody knows what do they do it. I think lots of these things about this, as you mentioned, more probably about vision, maybe about some audio and touch as well. But I think these are all interesting things, and lots of economic aspects that can be improved. And these are like a great type of things that exist. Great. So that is good. I think that is a good place. Now, let me ask you something more about personal life. Like, I mean, this is the one that I asked actually, Professor Ming in previous week as well. So, you have been, I think, married. I got it from her around, I think, 84. From her.
94.
In 94, sorry, yeah, 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is, now it is almost like more than 30 years. And you were, correct? Yeah, like 30, 28 years or something.
28 years, almost.
27, so, 28. How was the life? I mean, like, I think the people who might want to be both scientists, they want to become professors, or like maybe one scientist and one working in the industry, but still is a scientist. How was the life essentially? Is like, does it have any effect on children and others? I mean,
yeah. So the thing is, we both have had same position. Like we both at Berkeley together. Then we both faculty at UNC and now faculty at UMD. And then our research has a lot of overlap, a lot of joint grants. So it's a very unique situation that. So sometimes it becomes very interesting because there's no boundary between personal and professional life. Sometimes even at night, we'll talk about. My paper got rejected, or this new grant is coming, or this new metaverse is coming. So we're a very unique situation here. Sometimes there, and of course, our kids grew up in a very similar household. They see us talking about research all the time, right? Or they'll talk about your colleagues, because we are a very unique situation where we are the work. People talk about work-life balance, whatever that means. But in our case, there is no boundary, right? Especially, in fact, our kids are gone. Now we are at home. So and we both work late at night. So it's a very different situation, but it's how you take it, right? One of the reasons I like my job, I like to work a lot, is because I really enjoy working with my students, right? So I really love my students, and that's what keep me going. Undergraduate, graduate students, very good students. And sometimes, in every part of life, you have bad days. My very good paper got rejected, my very good proposal got rejected, or something else happened, So it's a different situation, but it's okay, right? So kids got affected, and they grew up in a very. If you ask them the question, they probably heard about talking about research all the time. They got exposed to all our research. They got exposed to all our colleagues, right? So when I was at UNC, some of my closer friends were my colleagues, right? And now even at UMD, many of the people I hang out are my colleagues, right? Like I go sometime lunch and so my kids know a lot about my colleagues because we talk about that at home, right?
But I think you already mentioned that you had to somehow replicate of your own life, because you had exactly the same time when you were a child and your father was a professor, and right. You knew that. And I think it was a great success. Now you are like great successful scientist. So that may happen actually, hopefully happen to your children as well. So that would be, so in that sense, I think, yes, there is something probably it would be some bias toward the topics that you will talk at home comparing to ordinary couples. But I think that's can be, I think, good things. And so that's good. And I think that's like actually great things. And so far, I think Professor Ming actually mentioned that also, that sometimes, even you are discussing actually about some material, the same thing that you mentioned. You are doing some research things, and, sometimes research and personal, they can go together, as you mentioned. And that's like that. So has the life been stressful essentially because both of you are scientists, or?
I think, look, every every job, whether we are scientists or even if suppose different field, let's say I'm a faculty and let's say she's a doctor, or if I am of somebody good businessman, every professional life has its plus and minus things. Like I'm sure everybody have some stress in their life, right? So whether even if you're a small business, right? Especially, we have been going through COVID, right? A lot of people got affected, right? It was very unfortunate for a lot of people, as we are lucky that, we were well protected and we have been safe. So I think the stress we have is no more than anybody else's stress, that, any professional couple, everybody has stress, but I don't think it's any more. Like every job has success. And I think overall, it's more of a benefit that, the fact we work together, we write joint proposal, joint student, that we have a joint group, so sometimes that helps. Actually, I would say that the benefits outweigh the downsides.
Yeah, so I think actually she mentioned something interesting that, because I asked whether was there any time that you competing with each other, some awards or some other things, and she mentioned that we tried that don't apply to the same award together. That was the rule that we had it such that there is not much competition in that sense.
Yeah, so because let's see, so this is we have a very unique situation that, okay, not only we are both professors, but we are both professors of the same institution and similar field. So we have a lot of joint common papers, right? So yes. If somebody has to ever make a decision between two of us, they're like, okay, it'll be very hard because they have very similar profile and that is there, but as I said, I think you got a lot of awards, even like grants, we write grant proposals together. So I think the benefits of being together, and sometimes, this is very important, especially even nowadays in academia, and even when my students are graduating, when they take a job, I tell them like to succeed academia, being as you mentioned at the beginning of the talk, trying to maintain a top academic group nowadays is very challenging. Every job is challenging, but getting grants and something. So it's very important, at least in our academic field and so for other fields, that you have a very conducive environment to succeed. You need good colleagues, you need good rankings, you need good colleague in your area. Like yesterday, we had a candidate visit day, right? And I tell all the students, look, you come to UMD, you got so many computer vision people, you got graphics people, you got robotics people, machine learning people, and look, there's so many students, so many faculty, you can work with them, you can interact with students, take so many classes. So I feel that to succeed as an academic, you need a very conducive environment, which means you need very good colleagues in close by area. I think that is very important. If I was the only person in graphics and VR, I think my productivity is much, much lower. So that's the integral part. So in that regard, having a very close collaborative colleague, I would say, overall, we have benefit much more being together than any downside. The benefits significantly outweigh any small downsides have, if at all.
Yeah, great. I think you mentioned exactly the correct thing. Like I mentioned this example, I got my master at the University of Waterloo. Like I got it 1 year and then went to MIT. And that was actually interesting thing. The time that I passed the border was September 13, 2001. 2 days after September 13. I thought the world was different essentially. They said that actually your visa, of course, I was from Iran, so the visa is still, you may have some problem actually. They may, like all the visas may be expired or something. I remember that I just took essentially a bag. I just said, okay, I will go there. So there is no bus. You need to go. I was from Waterloo, I went to Toronto. Said we cannot sell even the ticket from here to Boston. Because, actually, it was interesting thing. My ticket also was from, Toronto to Boston, Logan. That unfortunately, three of these, things. Actually, this airplane went from Logan.
Yeah, Logan.
Logan was the whole thing was essentially shut down. So it was like I said, I need to go and I need to find a bus because going to MIT. Of course, it's a great honor. So I want to go there, and I took the bus and then went there. So it was. I remember that anyhow, I passed the border. It was. At that time, I think the wave even didn't come to the border people. It was 2 days after that, and they mentioned like a lot of traffic. But for us, it took maybe only 30 minutes to hold bus past actually. Then we came to MIT. That was interesting. I was actually quite shocked. Like MIT, now it became a bit better. Like in terms of, they have a nice buildings. There was no C-sale at that time. They were a very old building. And I was originally actually in the math department before I was working more on seaside. And these are all old buildings, like very like the black floors and very old style. And like even in terms of computer labs, there was like the one that was at Waterloo, we had maybe 10, 12 very nice big labs with brand new computers. At MIT, we may have only one of such labs. And it was quite actually shocking. But the main thing is, at the end, it turns out that the environment is the one that makes MIT, because the people are there, they're just professors, like students, they're just competing with each other. Of course, and there are like, of course, grand talents there. You can collaborate and you can compete. That's the one that makes the life essentially like different life. I mean, great results are coming. And that's the thing that I tried also to tweet in my own research lab or research group, that I think we should just do that, try to collaborate at the same time, compete. And these two together, like having the ability to compete and collaborate, I think that has a big effect in like being successful. Like that was the thing that I have felt the whole life. And I think that's what my students, and I saw it in different places. Yes, there is some pressure. Competition is not always easy. Your paper gets rejected, you feel bad, or your grant gets rejected, you feel bad. But you know that's okay. And next time, just finish this one. Maybe I'm down for 1 or 2 days. But okay, next conference, next deadline. Yeah. That's a good thing. As long as I'm live, I can continue. But yeah, it hurts, but I think that's a good thing. Great. So I think this is like more about personal life. Again, we may come back to this thing. Somebody actually asked this question: is there any virtual reality for medical sciences as well? Have been considered that? Is there any concept at all?
No, there's a lot of interest in using VR in medical domain. In fact, I'm seeing conferences VR, because one thing which is happening now, I told you, that in the last 10 years, the industry investment has come up. So at least, if you want to get into VR 10 years ago, there was no hardware. At least today, you can go and buy Oculus Quest 2, Oculus Quest 3. Today, you have more hardware, even for non-people of the domain. The things are getting much better, right? The devices. So there's definitely a lot more. VR is suddenly the good thing. What has happened last 8 or 10 years to commoditization, VR is penetrating more into other fields. Initially, it was just computer scientists and gamers. There are conferences in VR. People are doing, VR for training, VR for, as I told you, surgical simulation. In fact, simulation in general, people are saying, if you look at, I'm not a medical expert, but they should train on live humans or cadavers, And this is where, haptic will come very useful, because people have been building. In fact, I had a funded project through NIH about 8 years ago, They want to replicate, give a surgeon the environment of operating. So can you imagine building a VR system? You're training somebody to do heart surgery. Just imagine how a brain surgery. There's a very delicate surgery, and this medical professional go through a sequence of, fellows, years and years training, right? And how do you minimize errors? How do you plan a surgery? So there's a huge potential there that you can train the surgeon to do. In fact, there's robotical surgery. There's a very good platform called Da Vinci, which is really getting up. And they showed that people do robotic surgery, the healing rate is much faster. So I think this is where I could imagine a lot of, especially with machine learning, all the data, the knowledge of previous medical knowledge and new devices. I fundamentally believe this can have significant benefit to the medical community research. That's my personal viewpoint.
Great. I think about these different things, like the vision is the one, again, you can't talk about the medical vision. I mean, hearing, of course, one thing, and also the haptic. I think these are all areas of the senses that potentially, I think, even for medical things that can help.
Right.
You, I think like a person like Stephen Hawking, I think that's another example that probably is the case that, he couldn't move, but still he could do the things because he's this.
Sure.
In some sense, the whole senses is virtual reality, because that's the whole idea is that, how can we essentially make these senses into bits such that we can transfer? If we can do that, then I think if I'm here, I can move my hands, we can do anything that I have it in my, so that surely I think it has a big effect also in the medical life there. Good. Now, let me actually ask you the other thing about robotics. Actually, this one becomes disconnected, so I just, like it is 1 hour. So we will come back. I need to just save it and put it, because if I don't save it, it will be gone.
Sure.
So I just save it 1 minute and then we will come back for the
okay, no problem.
rest of the things. Yeah, talk to you soon. Then.
Sure, thank you, Mohammed.
Thanks. Hi. So I think this is some, give us 1 minute or something like this for taking some
sure
break as well. Thanks for coming back. So we are continuing. I mean, the great live that actually have it. I learned a lot from the live myself with Professor Dinesh Manocha, working on very nice topics and hot topics of metaverse, virtual reality, robotics, and others. We talk about live in between. We talk also about like a research and nice topic. And actually, this is the one that I like about this live, because I think, like that I mentioned, so if sometimes they will ask you to go and give a talk, but when you go and give a talk, I mean, you need to prepare a slide. That takes a lot of time, and also is you are talking, I mean, more about the research things, this final state of the research, that if I am not in that area, I may not understand quite, I mean, all the topics. So in that sense, it's nice, but very limited audience. In that sense, I mean, this is the thing that we try, I mean, when we talk about it, and this is, in some sense, it has some formalism ideas, as well as, I mean, some, not that much formal, that I can ask questions, I can say my ideas there. It would be a bit, I mean, embarrassing if I say some stupid thing in like in middle of a talk that somebody is giving and ask some question that, I mean, I may feel afraid, or a bit, like not good feeling to ask some question if I don't feel that it is like a very right question. But here we can talk and we can things at the same time. It's formal, and I think we can learn. I mean, a lot, and especially I learned a lot from this talk. That's the thing that it would be great, essentially, that we have these things, and I enjoy having this one. And hopefully, other audience, we will put it on Instagram, YouTube, everything that we can enjoy as well. Great. So we talked about the virtual reality, going to the research. Now let's go to robotics. That's another thing. So of course, I mean, from the thing that we discussed, I mean, and actually let me add this one, that I have actually worked on robotics. I feel good about it, because like back in 2000, that was the year 2000. I was actually working on a Robocop. I think you should know about Robocop, especially. Sure. Yeah, and what was the idea there? The idea is still, I think it is there, that in 2015, the best robotics team, the humanoid one, there are several leagues, and that can beat the world champion at that year, 2015. In 2000, we were working, and I was actually the team from Sharif University, and that year, our team. And there's a competition every year. There's this Robocop, and there are different leagues. At that time, the middle size was the most realistic one. There was middle size, a small size, and I think there was one other simulation as well. So middle size, a small size, and simulation. I was working on this kind of the medium size, which was the main things there, and we became like champion. In Europe, and then we got the third rank in the world. Wow. And like for 1 year, that was the thing that I'm very essentially happy about it. There were four robots per each team that we were playing there, and I was the sole responsible person for goalie. That goalie was the best goalie in Europe and the world. That was the thing that I can claim. And actually, we got the third rank because it went to penalties. And the goalie was good, that he could take the things. Of course, wow. The shooting was good. But so for 1 year, I was sleeping in the library at Sharif University. I didn't go to even the dormitory at that time. I was just working. This one, I created. I bought cameras myself even, and installed it. Of course, we had some hardware people who were helping us. But like the CPU of that computer, I bought it myself. and I put it there. There were some people, mechanics, that they could do how does it move or something. They were doing that, and some hardware people. But lots of it I have designed it, and I was very proud that. And that was interesting things for me, that like making it short, like there was a lot of pressure for me. So, okay, you are going on theory. Yeah, you are good at maybe have done programming, but not robotics, essentially. The team was a lot of pressure for me. Why don't you do anything? Right. I remember for 1.5 months, I didn't write actually a single line of code because they had a previous year. It was very bad. Lots of ifs. And that was essentially just going in the middle, like in the middle of the game, it just go someplace and you couldn't move it until you receive a goal or essentially gain a goal. So that I was 1.5 months. Of course, I was working on theory algorithm. I was just thinking, how can I write the best goalie? I have written the whole goalie, the whole algorithm, main thing in 3 weeks, and that was the best goal. And I worked also some kind of positioning things because at that time also that was some other thing that for the whole team. So I have the goalie and the positioning. And the positioning is that with the limited cameras that you have, you want to find the positions of these robots because they could pass to each other and others. And this kind of, I think, concave mirrors, that was the idea, that we will put it on top of the robots, and then we had some cameras, such that you have the good idea about the whole thing. So that's that's the thing from the robotics. And we went, that was a great experiment. It was in actually, the world final was in all over the place, like lots of universities, Cornell, CMU, all other, they had a team there actually. We were from the Sharif and we got the third rank. So that was some kind of a brief summary of why I like robotics and I feel about it. And again, all this algorithm, I didn't have a proof, but I used this idea to have such a smart goalie. I'm very proud of it still. And so now given that, so this is the concept of robotics. In some sense, it has lots of intersection with virtual reality. So I think I want to let you, what are the differences, what are the similarities between robotics and virtual reality, the other thing that you are doing great research on that?
Yeah, so that's robotics and robotics. So there's a lot of, if you look at some of the mathematical roots, the techniques, the intellectual roots are very similar because, see, both robots and virtual reality, we deal with sensing. We already talk about sensing in virtual reality, right?
Yes.
So in virtual reality, the thing is, you take a lot of information, and ultimately you're providing the information to human sensing, human eyes and human ears or human hand to create an illusion, of something. You generate data to convey human sensing. The one different robot is, a robot, the ultimate goal of a robot is, ultimate is supposed to be like replicate human functionality, at least, like human or robot, or human vacuum cleaner, or robot delivery person. So the function, but the way you, both virtual reality and robotic, deal with a physical world, one way or the other. In virtual reality, you want to replicate that. A robot has to deal with physical objects using sensing. So a lot of intellectual root, and especially in the last 10 years, the technique you use, the same computer vision methods are used both in robotics and VR. In robotics, the robotics camera, they need to perceive the physical world. In augmented reality, you perceive the physical world, superimpose onto it. They're both using machine learning methods. So intellectually speaking, when I teach a robotics class or VR class, there is a lot of similarity. Now, one challenge in robotics always has been, see, robotics is multidisciplinary, and robotics is hard, and because you take sensing, you take mechanical actuators, and you have to build an overall system to achieve functionality. If you personally ask me, they're both fantastic fields, but like take something, the hardest thing in robotics is autonomous driving, okay? The industry has put more than $16 billion for the last 10, 12 years.
Well, autonomous driving.
Autonomous driving, venture capital, more than $16 billion. In spite of all the promises Elon Musk gave, even today, we're 2022 March, I get this question. I work all the time. I get covered in media. When autonomous driving is really going to happen? And I say, I don't know. Because robotics is considered classically part of AI. It's supposed to have the functionality of a human. And then if you look at the 6-year history of AI, we have always made very strong predictions which did not come out true. The hype was more than reality. So autonomous driving is like nothing of a robot on the road, But this is a robot that can deal with all difficult traffic situations in DC, in India, in Iran, and make a safe decision. How can you make sure this robot that get data from sensing, do a driving decision computing algorithm? Exactly. Remember you talked about goalie? You say you wrote a goalie with too many if-then statement, the goalie who could save penalty thing. Just example, the cases you did.
Exactly.
Even if a goalie was bad, it's only a goal. Okay, you made a wrong if statement, led to a goal. Here, autonomous driving, a wrong if statement can be a question of life and death. You're driving at 70 miles an hour, you make a wrong lane change, you bang into somebody. So,
and of course, it has happened for, I think, Uber. I think that was the accident that happened. I mean, I couldn't believe that because that was a video all over the place. I think that was some turning point actually for Uber. After that, they didn't continue that, and even they sold the whole thing. That you will go there and just hit a person with a bike that never could have happened essentially if the person was there.
Yeah. So the challenge in robotics is, so this having the level of reliability, the situation. So that's what makes robotics hard, that the robotics, so there are applications like vacuum cleaner at home. In fact, I'm part of a project with UMD and Amazon. I'm the PI, and I hosted a big speaker about a month ago. Amazon releasing this home robot called Astro in your home. And actually, it's a very hard problem because everybody's home has a different mess. My mess is different from your mess. We have cables on the ground, right? How can robot navigate, So one of the challenges in robotics right now is that all the success of a robot, if you see in the last 60 years, they were in factories, industry production, right? Then the last 20 years, the warehouses, the same Amazon we talked about, they maintain these huge warehouses. The robots would get the item from the warehouse, bring to the counter, they pack it. So all the fetching, like think of Amazon store, this warehouse, it's a mile long. It's a huge store. Amazon sells 400,000 items, In some storage, robot go and get it. But that is constrained because it's a store with no humans, and they make it robot friendly, the good lighting and everything. But homes, having a robot which can operate in anybody's home is a very hard problem. This is it. So robotics has some very serious challenges. We have made a good progress, but as I told you, one of the challenges is part of AI, and AI in time and again, in the last 60 years, the hype has been more than reality. And when will this problem get solved? Nobody has a good answer. We are working on it. We are seeing advancement. So while the intellectual merit is same, but there are different kind of challenges because virtual reality like haptics, touch, and the taste and sense have to create illusion. Robotics have to provide a sense of performance in driving in home, which makes it hard. So there are very common things, but at the same time, there are also differences also.
Good. So actually, I think, from your, thing that you mentioned, and also my thinking. So is it a good definition? I would say, virtual, what is the difference between virtual reality and robotics? In some sense, in virtual reality, we try to simulate the whole environment, everything, not including me. Robotics is exactly the reverse. The environment is there. We try to simulate myself essentially.
Right. That's a good way.
Yeah, but that seems right to me. You can. But again, both of them are simulation. Some about us, some about the environment. Right. And it turns out, I think, so far as you mentioned, I think I will say we are probably both probably started at the same time. Probably, I think in virtual reality we are maybe closer to the goal. I don't know what is the goal, but maybe we have more advanced than robotics. Am I right in that sense? Like maybe humans are more complicated than essentially environment. Environment, maybe I think that also makes sense in some sense because we have the brain that we can think. It is hard to simulate that one. That's the main part of robotics. Of course, the mechanics and others are there. But environment maybe is a dead body. Maybe we can do it better there. So right. What's your answer on that? Or
you're right. So they both, if you look at the first robot came in 60s, the first VR system came in 60s. See, in virtual reality, different level of fidelity. So I think the biggest success in graphics, in the field of graphics and VR last 50 years is two big applications, gaming and movies. Now, gaming is like tens of $billion industry, like the amount of games, the Fortnite, right? Playing a game, is a virtual environment. It's not immersive, but you know, you're playing a game on your iPhone or on your Xbox, a big screen, you're interacting. There's a visual display coming to you. You're moving the character around and you this thing. Even when you watch a movie, see, every movie you see today, there are movies from Pixar which are 100% computer generated, synthetic environment. But other movies, every movie has some special effects that a computer made. So they don't take live action, they do it. So they're basically doing it. So if you look at the impact you see in movies and games, it's like tens of billions of dollars. And like Hollywood, all movie industry and games, so that's a huge, and that's a big, all the market they've created.
So these are virtual realities, correct? Not robotics.
Yes, no, they are all virtual. So they're, a movie and a game is a think of a low fidelity virtual environment. Like you don't see immersive display, you see display. But to me, playing a game is, I'm making you immerse in an environment with the character. You're so involved, you're playing a game for an hour. You just forget the world. The game is so good. So for example, I give you one example. I know this quite well. There's a company called Epic Games. I knew them. In fact, the founder is Tim Sweeney, who's a Maryland graduate. They released a game called Fortnite a couple of years ago. It's just huge. In fact, what Tim Sweeney is doing, the Fortnite has a community of 60 million users. I think some huge. I may not have the number. He's turning the Fortnite into a metaverse. So while Facebook is turning devices, he already has this community, like a think of a shared environment among many tens of millions of users worldwide. It's like Facebook community. Facebook has 2.5 billion users. But Fortnite already has a 3D, it's like a 3D virtual world.
Yes.
So that's an example of a virtual world. So because of gaming and movies, we have had much more economic success, the number of users and the money raised. Whereas robotics, you know, robots are mostly traditionally used in assembly, car factories. That's a huge market. Now the warehouses have got a huge boost, especially what is happening now, especially with the COVID and this thing. Right now, at least in US, we have a shortage of labor. Serious because of this COVID affects, you know, everything. Shortage of truck drivers, shortage of restaurant workers. So now suddenly there's a much more focus on autonomy. Firstly, the AI is very hot technology, things are coming up. But now we are seeing a serious economic need. There is shortage of human. So we're asking the question, can some of these human tasks can be done by machine, which is a robot, customized, vacuum cleaner, you know, delivery man. So that may lead to more advancement because then people are putting more money, right? Like especially in US, there is shortage of 80,000 truck drivers. But autonomous truck driving is a lot of money is going around. It's still not reliable. So what people are saying is they're putting more and more automation in the trucks so they can reduce the human load. So this is always a combination of, you know, getting the right application with economic factors and the right technology. But we are suddenly at a stage right now, especially in the last 10, 15 years, a couple of things happened. The sensing technology has seen huge advancement, the cameras and the sensor LiDARs, you know, much better cameras, much better, cheaper. The advancement we see in computer vision and deep learning suddenly can make vision things possible we could not do 10 years. So robotics is a very exciting time right now because a lot of things which were developing are maturing. So I think we are seeing in the next 5 years, we are definitely going to see significant advancements in robotic and automation. That's happening. We're in a very golden time of that area. You will see that there's more and more autonomy and robotics is coming in your daily life. That's going to happen.
Great. Yeah, actually, that's an interesting thing. So that is one of the things that I remember. It is interesting. So I remember I visited Uber like around 2017, 2018. And then one of my students also joined there. And at that time, I remember there was a talk that like by 2019, we were done with the like self-driving car. 2020, they were thinking about the trucks, that they want to have the done with the trucks. And it turned out that actually, I think it was one and a half years ago that they sold out the whole self-driving car to another startup. Technology. Aurora, yes. Aurora, they sold. So it was interesting. They understood actually they are very far from the one that they could do that things. So one thing that I like about this Robocop that I mentioned, this is Robocop essentially soccer between robots, is that, they put it 250 as the virtue. Still, we have, this started, I think, back probably 1995 or something like this, around that time of this. but the goal was for 2050. It was like more reasonable thing. So a similar thing I will say about like in theory that happens. For example, P versus MP. I believe that the people actually consider this concept of P versus MP. Maybe at that time that was around now 1960 something like that was a hot topic. They believe maybe in 10, 20 years we can answer P is equal to MP or not. This even actually one I think at this point probably I don't expect that P not equal to MP is solved like in the next 100 years. That's my understanding. The same actually was another thing very similar to about the BPP versus P. So I said that what is that? The idea is that you have a polynomial time algorithm. And polynomial time, this is like more deterministic polynomial time algorithm versus randomized polynomial time algorithm. The idea that these two would be the same essentially. And I believe that I actually was there, I was talking with the people at MIT, they were teaching the courses like Madhusudan, lots of other people. And the belief is that by 2010, we are proving that BP is equal to P actually. I think again, probably now I will say nobody expects that it happen in the next 30 years. So in some sense, is that at some point we understand actually we may not even have that knowledge that how far are from the actual reality of this thing and solving this thing. So what is your expectation for self-driving car? When do we have self-driving car? Like as a regular thing. Because again, I was at Uber at that time. It was a driver says self-driving car. And this guy was putting hands like this around the wheels. And just anything happens, just take the control. That is not a self-driving car to me. When can we have the self-driving car that the cars are there? I can call my car, comes and park and go on this thing.
So that's, what we call in self-driving, we call level autonomy. So like if you buy Tesla today, I have a Tesla, it's called level 2 plus autonomy, right?
Yes.
Then there's level 3. The full autonomy is close to level 4 level, like Waymo, the Google division.
Yes.
They've been working on level 4. The most autonomous driving, very smart a human can take over, So this is one lesson I've learned that, I don't want to put a year. All I tell people is, if level 4 autonomy happens in my lifetime, I'll be very happy. Let's just put it this way.
Okay.
It's the thing is, as I said, time and again, we have underestimated. Remember, given the history, we talk about computer vision. Today, computer vision is considered a great field because of deep learning. When the computer vision idea was started in the 1960s, somebody thought a human do vision. When people thought about computer vision, the famous story, somebody thought it's a simple problem. It's going to be a summer job. It was something like a one summer internship project. So this
what was the project?
We'll do the computer vision capability in one summer. They thought humans do it. So this is 60. So I'm saying time and again, we have underestimated the problem. Now remember, let me give you, to answer the question. All the AI, the success was all those symbolic AI expert systems, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The recent surge in last 10, 12 years, machine learning and data, okay? But if you really think about, so even the best self-driving car that Waymo has, it lacks the common sense of a 6-month-old baby. You know what we call common sense?
Yes.
Like a situation comes, Mohammed, this is like you got small kids, right? You got a kid, like your kid was born November, right? 4-month kid. So your 4-month kid has beautiful baby has some simple common sense, which this car doesn't have, because the car is all dealing with the data you trained it. So what if you come with a situation which you never encountered? The humans have common sense. So in some way, our best AI system, autonomy systems, lack the common sense of a 6-month-old baby. That is today. So given that state of the art, right, can you have a driving system which can deal with every situation that you may think about? So that is a real problem, In fact, some of my colleagues feel the current state of the AI, which is deep learning the last 10 years, some people have a feeling that any deep learning system is going to reach the limit. It's limit of any, limit of computing, like talk about P equal to NP, right? If a lot of people conjecture P is probably not going to be equal to NP, but if P equal to NP, all this wonderful algorithm comes polynomial time. So there's a similar feeling. We have to understand. In fact, a lot of wonderful theory people are working on what are the limits of machine learning, how far we can push, And you get 90% accuracy, 95% accuracy, you get how much data. So just remember, these are these are hard problems. And, as I said, time and again, we have made wrong predictions. So I don't want to make any prediction. All I can say is if level 4 autonomy happens in my lifetime, I will be a very happy person. I just think it's a hard problem. And with hard problems, as you said, if somebody asks the same question, when P equal to NP going to get solved, and what will your answer be?
Yeah,
It's the same question.
100 years ago. That's like that.
So,
yeah, that's actually interesting thing about the life. I mean, I think maybe we as scientists tend to say that okay, we can solve the problem, but it takes time actually we understand how far we are from the problem because we understand how deep is the problem, and that's I think somehow it's the beauty of like science that you will go there and you don't. This is the best thing that happened to me. That sometimes I will think that I think that I know a lot about the world and the life. And then I think at some point, I don't know anything about the life and the world. That's the good thing. Then you can think more about it and hopefully get this thing. Good. So getting back to actually some question about the personal life. Like we will go back and forth, I think, to make it. I mean, having both taste essentially. So we will come back to research. So did you had any motivating or like a fun story when you were a child or your undergrad or others that you want to share or like inspiring a story essentially for the people that they can use it?
Well, I'm sure everybody lives, you always have some interesting experience, right? Sometimes, in fact, when I came to graduate school from IIT, I thought I would do theory. I thought when I applied my graduate school application, I want to do theory, okay, complexity theory, because what happened was when I was in India, IIT, computer science was still a new topic. And, the one good professor we had was theory. They were virtually, I took a graphics class in India, but we didn't have any displays, any terminal. I did not get exposure to graphics. I knew about robotics. I read a few papers, but didn't have exposure. So, sometimes your exposure is limited and you're excited by it. But when I discovered the field of graphics and robotics, I said, wait, because I wanted theory because theory was mathematics. I like math, right? So that was easy. But if you look at robotics, it's all about configuration spaces. Topology is one of the most mathematical topics. There's a lot of math goes into modeling the physical world and making motion planning, and I teach. So sometimes, your viewpoint is limited, right? And as you grow older, right, you actually appreciate much better. In fact, one thing is that when I was younger and now, we can solve every problem. That it'll be done, right? We're too eager, right? We thought we can do it. And sometimes it takes you 20 years to realize why problems are hard, right? Why, for example, in virtual reality, we say, okay, when you make displays which put phonons in your eyes, there is no Moore's law for displays. Like your computers have been getting fast for 50 years. We talk about Moore's law. Computers are going to get faster, multiple cores. But display resolution is not going to grow at some exponential rate. So some things in life don't have the Moore's law, right? Same thing for developing computer system with common sense, right? You understand what common sense is. Your 2-year-old kid can understand common sense is.
Yes.
But if I ask you the question, Mohammed, can you develop computer system with better common sense, And
I can think about. I mean, you need to put lots of ifs there, essentially,
yeah, so that's one way.
Impossible, essentially, you make anything.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, when I was young, at least when I was high school, I had no exposure to computers. I didn't even know what graphics was. We heard about robotics like the science fiction story. Robot is an old term from science fiction. We read about it. We saw TV shows, right? Whatever. I saw Star Wars, the big channel I used to watch in India, right? You see all this illusion. I remember in Star Wars, I used to watch this Star Wars. It should come. India was like only one TV channel. On Sunday morning, Star Trek would come, and they would show this like a holodeck, that person appears. And like this, it was like totally science fiction, But I did not realize, that would be so cool. Like all of us saw Star Trek, science fiction movies, or we saw something which inspired you. But I had no clue what it really, how hard it is. So you get inspired, but wow, it'd be nice so cool to do this. It's the same thing, think of a kid who's growing up today. Today, the kid has all the information. They got Google, they got social media, right? They can go to YouTube and watch everything, which we did not have. So they have expectation, but the challenge is, will we build 1965. Will be autonomous driving car? It may not happen for 40 years. So on one hand, you get exposed to a lot of good ideas. It inspires you. And sometimes, it happens with all of us. I was at IIT and somebody come and gave a talk. In fact, I remember meeting Papade Mitro. He was visiting India for a conference. I knew he was a big name, 86. Okay. Oh, he's this big guy from Stanford. Okay. I met him. I like, wow, he's a big guy, right? I want to hear his talk, So sometimes you get inspired by some event in life. You hear some big name, you get exposed to things, because in 30 years ago, exposure was limited. But when you come to reality, and suddenly even, sometimes you hear a talk and you get inspired. Oh, wow, that is so cool. So all of us have this what I call, life inspiring events that change your course. Sometimes it's just like this. So that way I'm no different than anybody else.
Yeah, so that's like you put it like, essentially this happens in lots of time. Maybe it's not just one thing. I think that's a good thing, that like not one thing can inspire you, but there are lots of them, lots of events that this can happen and inspire you in your life. So good. So let's. So I think we talk about this one. We talk about the robotics. So is there any like a particular research problem in robotics that like, if I want to do research and graduate a student from there and I want to think about it, I think we talk about this, for example, haptic and like the taste and smell type of things, that these are very great things for virtual reality. Not much work done, the people can do it. What about robotics? What are the things that you think these are the next questions that the people should think about?
So robotics, I've been around for 30 years. So my work in robotics is a very broad field. Like you could have a whole department of robotics, you can have a college of robotics. There's so many. Robotics is a collection of fields. There's control, there is actuator, there's hardware, there is planning, there's vision, there is manipulation, So my own research is a sub part of robotics called navigation, planning, So the field of planning, at least I got into robotics, actually my undergraduate thesis was on motion planning. That's why I wrote an IIT. You're supposed to write a bachelor thesis, simple version. If I see that field from late 80s to today, 22, I think we have come a long way. What was planning that time, what we could do today. In fact, even right now, my research is navigation. One of the projects I'm doing right now, I have a big army funded grant and something. Can robot go through dense crowds? Like, suppose I'm from India. India is very populated, right? Right now it's COVID, but in India, you got a lot of dense crowd in metro stations and malls, right? Very dense. And can robot go through humans? So I've been working on that problem. And more recently, I'm working on robot working on outdoor scenes. In fact, we are on Maryland campus. I want a robot that can go and deliver objects from one building to the other. And if you look at the Maryland campus, the terrain, you got roads, you got hills, you got mud, you got rocks. You can walk. You can walk from one part of the campus to the other easily, Mohammed, but my robot cannot. So I'm working on that we can do. But one place in robotics where we have actually think very little progress in the last 30 years, and you suddenly realize, one of the most amazing human is the hand, the grasping. Yes. So if you look at evolution, I've got much more respect for I talk about, tying a shoelace, go to your button. So even if you look at Amazon is investing the amount robotics, incredible. They want to automate at a scale. They put robots in warehouses, huge amount of robots. Now, Amazon have a challenge. So they bought a company called Kiva, close to $1 billion, and they're deploying in warehouses for shipping things around. That's good. Amazon, whenever you order from Amazon, the items come, they put them in a box, they pack them up, and they seal it. And yes. Amazon, if you order 3 items, they want to pack it together, ship the shipping cost. Yes. So Amazon wants a solution that can a robot take the items, put them in a box, and seal it, just like humans do. This is a problem they tried for 6 years, picking challenge. And they still can't do it. So grasping is one field in robotics we have not seen much progress in the last 30 years. So some problems, again, why? So, and this is the human hand, right? How dexterity you have. So I suddenly realized as I work on the problem, my God, trying to simulate the functionality of my hands is so hard. I got 5 fingers, I got joints, I got touch sensing, I get temperature, hot and cold. So we do this task every day. You tie your shirt button, you write a piece of pen, you type on the computer, you cut your vegetable, you cook. You don't realize how much functionality your hands have, and replicate that functionality for a robot, even 5% of that, we still cannot get a good hardware. Right now, there's a lot of funding going around, venture capital money. But if I say, Mohammed, if you can solve Amazon packing problem, right, picking, Amazon will give you billions of dollars, billions, because they won't do at a scale. In fact, every Christmas season, Amazon hired tens of thousands of people to nothing else, just pack, because they get items, shipping. So this is the problem with economic scale. So even forget full packing. I say, Mohammed, let's not take, even if you can improve their packing efficiency by 10%, 10% of billions of dollars is still, I was at a talk many years ago. Jeff Bezos gave a talk before COVID. In 2019 or 2018, they said in the US, Amazon delivery budget just in US was more than $25 billion. Amount of money they're picking, they deliver box. This is before COVID. Imagine after COVID, how much Amazon business has grown. And he told us, in 5 years, can you do 10% delivery by robots? Now, delivery, I think we can, because we have some technology. But grasping the capability of anything of a simple hand is still a challenging problem.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So I think I don't want to go to that much the philosophical question. But there are two visions about the world. Like you can consider that God created us, or you can say this revolution happened, that the people become from a small thing. Of course, like I think for Earth, they believe like the current estimated like 5 billion years that has been created. So that's quite actually interesting, that how come like the human can do that? Like, is this just the time you need this 5 billion? And of course, there are some algorithms. If you believe essentially in the revolution idea, this 5 billion year, it was some algorithms had been happened during this time. It means that I was actually thinking about this, that it was not just a random thing. Random, it cannot happen. Some kind of greedy algorithms, or this kind of back propagations, and like this kind of this algorithm that they are using at machine learning essentially to get the optimum solutions. Some algorithm like this have happened. I will call them greedy algorithms. That like some people, some creatures have been created. Some of them they couldn't essentially last. They died. Some others happened. And some algorithms that happened. This is not the case. Some random thing that happened. But right. That is really exciting. So is it the case that we are not there because that happened in 5 billion? And that was also another interesting thing that we were discussing. I was reading some of this, actually, was reading some of this Stephen Hawking things, that like maybe in the first 2.5 billion years, nothing happened. Just very small things happened. And then this happened like later and later. Like I think that was the interesting thing, that like back in 1950, or knowledge, like the medical knowledge, or that essentially doubles every 50 years. Now the current estimate is that every year it doubles. So in some sense, the same thing may happen. Like the first 2.5 billion, nothing, very small things happen. But then it's expedited because of this greedy algorithm, essentially, this kind of gradient descent has happened. And then it made smarter and smarter agents that right. We are here, essentially. So that's one thing is that I think, so which one you think, is like of course, like God versus this, I don't want to discuss but like it seems that like if we believe in that theory of revolution, in that case, then it means that you really need this, I don't know, the time is the one that we needed to get into these things. So what's your feeling about this?
So that's just a lot of your question is philosophical part, and evolution, right? So I'm not expert in that, I don't comment. But I tell you, let's say I've been in the field for more than 35 years, right? If you look at 4 big revolutions I've seen just in my academic career, right? Okay, I come to US, 80s, there were computers, some of it academia, and we had internet. We sent emails. So emails were always there, okay? Yes. Email has been there since 80s, but we had computers with some text screen. The 80s computers were terminals. Then in the 90s, internet happened. Internet was always there, but web happened, right? The interface. So internet been there since 70s. It was on a university, but then internet, like what we call the web, World Wide Web came. It was a game changer. Suddenly people could do things. I know before that I used to make travel reservations, stock, everything became web-based. Then came the PC revolution. Suddenly, you know, everybody has a computer at home. In 80s, nobody had a very poor computer at home, like a terminal. That happened. Then in early 2000, mid 2000, the mobile devices, iPhone, right? What iPhone did to the computer industry. Suddenly you have a device in your hand. Now today you can't live without it. You leave your iPhone at home, you'll be dead, right? You'll be like, and Uber did not happen. Social media did not happen. So that's other what happened. Then the last 10 years, this whole machine learning, the deep learning, the compute and data coming together. So just in the last, I would say since the 90s, the last 30 years, I've seen of course, behind everything, there was a lot of research over the decades, but there were tipping point happened. The mosaic web happened, the PC happened, the mobile thing happened, the machine learning thing happened, right? And that suddenly somebody showed the first prototype, and that suddenly led to investment and huge thing. All the things we talk about today, Metaverse. Now everybody's working on an augmented reality display. Like people have been telling me the next platform is your glasses. Okay, you already can glasses with cameras, microphones, and speakers. So right now you carry a phone in your pocket and you have to do like this. Imagine this display, everything comes in here. Facebook is spending a lot of money in that.
Yes.
You perceive the world, information comes to you, right? If somebody comes with a good prototype, Mohammed, of AR glasses, okay, it'll change your life. Just like Apple iPhone and smartphone change your life. Amazon announcing this amazing home robot. If this becomes a success, having a robot in your home doing some things, once you reach the first tipping point, it'll just get better. Like iPhone 3 was the first starting point. Today got iPhone 13, but things have changed. So my take is that while a lot of effort, but a lot of billion people go over decades, when somebody put this nice first tipping point system, that just wows it. So I really feel that in robotics and what we call AR, VR, virtual reality, that I don't like the term metaverse between me and you. I like to say virtual reality or augmented reality. In the next K years, I don't want to put K, we might see a device or see something hardware which is just as good as an iPhone was or World Wide Web was. And once that comes, then all the wonderful knowledge within 50 years could be at a tipping point. So at least in computing field, you know, there's a lot of progress by lots of thousands of people worldwide they build, but then something packages a nice tipping point and that changes the field. So I do feel the next K, again, I don't want to put K number would be. We will see something tipping point in what we call virtual reality, augmented reality, and robotics. I'm very optimistic about that.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, that I mentioned, so that's actually, I mean, like, it is interesting, this discussion that I mentioned, this philosophical thing, because I'm thinking about this, and this is actually interesting. Like, for a while, I had this idea of this randomness that, again, if random things cannot build us like that, and if you believe in randomness, actually means that there are probably lots of other planets that they have people like us or much more advanced than us.
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. But the interesting thing is that it is not quite random. That was the thing that I just more revolution, like some revolution in my thinking, that I believe actually it's not just randomness. This kind of randomness plus this algorithm, this gradient descent that is coming, and these tip points that you mentioned. If you believe in that, then actually it is not. Then you may believe that actually maybe the world is huge, but still there might be not too many people are advanced as humans, because this is again two different things that they are discussing in philosophy. And one is that essentially there were several components that it made us like that, and some some crazy algorithms happened that made us like that, and we are advancing more and more like this. And so, yeah, anyhow, that's quite actually interesting. And again, hopefully there are more points in our life that we see more changes. But again, that's the interesting thing about the whole world. Like, so many planets. Are there some other people advanced, some other creatures like us? I don't know, but I think if you think it that way, that's quite, I mean, it gives different results actually.
Yeah, but so the main point is, you know, no, so we don't know what could be happening. But see, even if you look at I think my feeling is, even though you saw World Wide Web, even you saw PC revolution, even you saw smartphones, social media, and now data learning, the intellectual components were advanced over the years. Like World Wide Web did not happen without networking or graphical interface. It's just that even iPhone had combination of technologies which were assembled, put together, but people are working then for like 20, 30, 40 years. So people are working like slow evolution, a lot of things are happening. Somebody just puts the advancement in some novel factor, right? So just think of this way. I look at this food. Okay, I eat Indian food. Indian food has like thousands of history over centuries. You know, people learn spices how to cook. Similarly, to Iranian food, this Chinese food. But imagine these are over thousands of years. And suppose we take some Indian spices and Chinese spices and Iranian spices, just put them together a new way. It may sound, wow, it'll be a breakthrough, but it's not breakthrough. But look, you build on all the thousand of years of history of Indian food, Iranian food, and Chinese food. You did something new, but you build on their years. So my intuition is that, you know, things progresses slowly, but suddenly some combination happens, maybe random combination, that becomes a tipping point. That's the way I look at
it. Great. Okay, so that sounds good. So that's like let's go. I mean, to the I think we talk about this and we talk about. I mean, you mentioned about the motion planning and like that's like some of the problem that you mentioned that like a child can do it, but still, I mean, like wrapping something around a box essentially that a child can easily do it like in a few years, but robots are still they are very far from doing that.
Right.
These are like a great thing. And like one other question, like in final question regarding that, like, how do you like see the interaction? Because you, as you mentioned, that was interesting that you mentioned you want to do theory and theory like algorithms and other things. And then you were doing that. I mentioned the same experience that I was doing theory and then I was doing robotics. So how do you see, I mean, because you work on both of these, how do you see the interaction between these two concepts, like theory and like more practical stuff? How do you see the relation between them?
But see, this we have seen, let's say computing field is now 70 years old from 50s, right? I think if you look at the advancement in computing, it has happened because both sides have been good. There have been smart theory people and smart applied people. I think both, it's not theory versus practice. They both are important. We need, remember, even if you look at today, if you teach my robotics class, my class is all about mathematical concepts. The math I teach in my robotics class is similar to math you teach in algorithms class. You know, you have discrete math. So the intellectual roots are very strong. And if everybody now doing machine learning, but machine learning is built on all the roots in statistics, right? All the learning methods. So as I said, if there were not all those wonderful theoretical advancements, you would not see this practical. So I think as a researcher, both are very important. So both are equally important and we need enough effort in both. You know, without significant theory advancement, we would not see this practice, right? But they both have their own place. Now, some people like to theory because some people say like, if you could spend 20 years solving a P equal to NP, and if you solve it, you'll be a very famous person because you solve one of the biggest open mathematical problem in the modern world today, you know? But now with practical, you know, in fact, many of my friends work in Google and Amazon or even Facebook, they get gratification from the fact that if they put some idea in Google, YouTube, right? They got millions of users overnight. So some people get gratification that sometimes in the practical world, let's say if you build a robot, which is suddenly become a big hit, iPhone type, you know, sometimes in the practical world, some people see the tangible impact very quickly. Some people like that, which is nothing wrong with that. But let me again say, every practical advancement seen in computing, whether it's the World Wide Web, whether it's PC, whether it's smartphones, social media, machine learning, if we are not invested in theory, none of this would have happened. So we should continue investing in both of them. And in fact, I tell my students, at least when you come to university, learn, today machine learning is important. Today this is important. What will be the hot thing in 2035? I don't even know. So having, as a graduate student and anybody working in the field, having a strong theoretical foundation is critical because without that foundation, you know, you will never be able to make strong advancement. So at least when you come to, in fact, if any regret I have, when I was at Berkeley, I wish I had taken more math classes, okay? I could have never imagined when the grad student 30 years ago, I heard about quantum and I thought quantum mechanics was too hard. I think this is too abstract and too hard. Today, everybody's talking about quantum computing. And I wish I'd learned something about quantum physics when I was in grad school. So I tell every student, when you're a graduate student, get your foundation right, because you don't know how that foundation is going to help you in life in next X years.
Great. I think that's like exactly the same feeling that I have it. That like I think that to me ideas are important. Theory or non-theory doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
One beautiful idea I enjoyed when this happens. For example, the way that the advancement on essentially fighting with cancer, these T cells that they make them smart such that they will go and feed them. That's a beautiful idea to me, independent whether it is theory or not. Like that goalie that I created, that the way that I could do it with minimum number of ifs, the way that I can create it, that's the idea that I like. Right. I'm doing some kind of like web design. I mean, some of these ideas that I will say, for example, in Kubernetes, these are like some of the things. I really love, I mean, the way that they are building this they define it essentially like like small systems that they should do the whole work and they should divide. This is the way of architecture. That's the thing that's essentially very inspiring to me. And these are the ideas. So I think in that sense, we completely agree with each other. So I think, good. So let me, I mean, we have, I think, like maybe 3-4 minutes, like 4-5 minutes to, I think we can probably finish by this one. Just sure. Maybe you want to just give some final words about this. And I think something about your startup also, if you want to add some experience about that. We have something like 4 or 5 minutes, so I think you can just do any final words and like a little bit also about the startups if you want to talk about it.
Well, the final thing is, so I look at today, so if I'm a 20-year-old kid today, right? I'm not 20, I'm like, this is a great time to do work on these problems like robotics and VR. Let's say, in next year, you're going to see big advancement. I'm totally convinced, but it may not totally solve the problem. So the amount of technology development we're having, and the thing is, and the impact is impacting everybody's life. It's not just for computer science researchers. The smartphone, the social media, the internet help everybody, the Google. So this is really great to be working in one of the hottest things in the mankind can do today, technology, which is helping one. So everybody wants to work on that. You are working on some of the coolest things. Now, I've done 2 startups before. One on simulation. I did a startup on audio technology, which came out of my research at UNC. My student did the startup. And of course, startup is, there was an interesting experience I learned that when you do research, you want to make good technical impact. Now, in the business world, sometimes good technology and good business are 2 different things. Just because something good technology doesn't mean it's going to be commercially viable. Exactly. So that's a lesson I learned a lot, and I have a lot of experience how when I did the audio technology startup in 2011, we could do this, we could do this. I went and talked to customers, and there were so many eye-opening stories. Just because I think it's cool doesn't mean it makes sense. I can tell you like exactly. 2 hours on that.
Very important thing. Like maybe this is the part that like being a professor versus not. It may like you may think this is a nice idea, but commercialization actually is a big step that you need to do that. Actually, Professor Mingling talked about the one that you had it. I think the one that UNC 5 years after that you sold out. So yeah. Have you done anything after that as well?
So that was Impulse Sonic. So that was based on the audio simulation research, yeah. And that got sold to Valve. But not only we sold that to Valve, I also had some other patents. So if you look at today in the gaming and VR industry, the big 3 players are Microsoft, Facebook, and Valve. All 3 of them licensed our technology. One of them bought our startup, but the rest of them licensed our patent. So we had multiple technology from UNC. So they're all audio solution in the industry came out of our research. So that's a very satisfying thing for me. My new startup is on robotics, and boy, I can tell you robotics, if you look at the history of robotics, because robotics has been so hard, in robotics, the number of startups that really succeed is very, very small. It's a challenging thing. Okay.
And I think the funding also is harder because you need bigger funding. The government is the main source. Like less VCs probably want to do that. Like say, go get it from Amazon. They have big pocket to give you the money.
Yes. So actually, I have a new startup. In fact, our initial funding is from 2 sources. We got some funding from Maryland Innovation Grant, MII grant. It's from Maryland Innovation. Yes. And we just got NSF SPIR phase 1. So we are very lucky to get some initial money from government sources, which is helping us develop. Now, there is also a lot of venture money because if you have, let's say, new solution to grasping problem, right? See, VCs want to invest in technologies which are high risk but high payoff. If you come with a solution of grasping problem, you know if you nailed it, Amazon will pay you $1 billion because they need it. There's a market for that. So my new startup is on robot delivery, outdoor scenes. Okay.
Yes.
Can you deliver food? Can you deliver, like, just imagine, think of this way. I have example. Think of University of Maryland. We got like so many departments. We got about 50 buildings. Everybody orders from Amazon. I'm sure Amazon is sending trucks of loads of packages to our campus every day. Okay. So they come, they park, the guy has to come and go to every building, like Erie building, A.V. Williams building, go and drop it, right? Just imagine on the campus. So my vision is, imagine the Amazon truck at a central location and packages go to every building by a robot.
Great.
Or can I do robots to ship between A.B. Williams, this outdoor robot, delivery? So this is inspired by what Amazon Jeff Bezos said. I said before COVID, Amazon was spending $27 billion. Now, delivery is too hard. So I'm not able to solve it, but could I even do 2% of $27 billion? So even like one of the things I have, me and you have an office on the 5th floor, right? Suppose yes. And we have a cafeteria on the 1st floor, right? Sometimes I'm busy and we are doing, imagine, can I get a Starbucks in my room, right? So imagine a robot goes down, I place an order on my iPhone. Now the guy downstairs is too busy. I cannot go down to pick it up. He puts it on the robot. The robot comes to the elevator, come outside my office, and I go and pick it up. So we are looking into, even in fact, one of the things we're looking at is food delivery at the airport. A lot of times you want to go to the airport, you fly. There's a big line at Starbucks. You don't want to leave your gates. There's a big line at McDonald's. So could you imagine place an order and the back kitchen guy robot brings the things to you? So I'm looking at these kind of navigation technology because it can go through humans, navigate humans. Other idea that I have in mind is, imagine we all go shopping. And now Amazon is going toward, cashierless shopping, one thing, but you all drag a cart, okay? Yes. So my idea is that imagine you don't drag a cart, cart follows you. In fact, even better, we go to shopping with a list, and when you go to any store, whether it's Walmart, Giants, or Harris Teeter, you struggle. Where is cookies? Where is coffee? Where is frozen food? You can't find it. You struggle, and they're not human help. So imagine you have a smart cart which guides you to tell you, Mohammed, here's the ice cream. It's aisle number 14. So think of a sensor-driven, this thing, they know the environment, but they can move automatically. So instead of you dragging a car, the cart, you follow the cart. Because still, you know what ice cream you want. You want chocolate, pistachio, or cookies and cream. But it can show it to you. So we have this navigation technology with a lot of autonomous delivery. We're looking at airports, we're looking at food delivery, we're looking at grocery shopping. We haven't nailed it down yet, but we think, so we have technology, we are trying to see where we can make a business prototype. That's where we are right now.
Great. Yeah, I think that's actually a great opportunity, and this is like, thanks for also describing the startup. I think that's just an important one. Again, because in having startups in areas like robotics is much harder than some other thing that you just build it with some computers, and nowadays there are cloud, you can put the compute cost. Because you need to do that, you need to talk about the mechanical aspects, like, I don't know, like some kind of system aspects and lots of other things which does not exist. And it's great that actually we're working on that, and congratulations actually both SBIR one, that's and also the MIA, I think it was the first step, but the SBIR one is like a great one. And that's actually a good source of money to get. I think we will have some kinds of like live about this type of SBIR and others hopefully in the near future as well.
Sure.
That we talk to the audience that how you can get it. And I think that's a good way of getting the money, but you need to have a good science. I think that's the important one. Not everyone can get good things here.
Yeah, so the challenge is, you see, my feeling is you only have a partial working technology. You don't have perfect technology. You only have partially working technology. Can you turn your partial technology into a successful product? So that is the part we have to figure out. Because robotics is never perfect, but, I just said, but remember one thing which is happening. Firstly, this revolution in AI and sensing is helping. But secondly, there's a bigger need, because how many people don't have bartenders? How many people are shortage of labor? Delivery people, right? You know how much Amazon struggle to get delivery drivers? You want your packages? So right now is a combination of advancement technology and the economic need. So that is becoming a very critical mass. Even like you want to go to store, people don't want to send a cashier line and pay. That's why Amazon is having this to go store. They're opening up a Whole Food cashierless, totally, you just walk away. So there's a lot of trend economy happening, you know. So this is an opportunity, and of course there's a challenge, you know. Robotics is hard. So I may just find in 3 years this was just too hard. I aim for too hard and I failed. That's always the risk you take. It's okay.
Yeah, actually we are ending in like 20 seconds. So I just want to thank you for that. I think that was a great live. I learned a lot from this. I mean, we may talk maybe future and some other things about this, but I learned a lot. Thanks a lot for coming to the live and